Next on Currents News, major new twists and turns in the Chilean sex abuse crisis. Prosecutors are acting and cardinals are in the spotlight. The latest is next. The feds are taking action against fake charities. The scammers are cheating veterans and active duty military. We'll tell you about the crackdown. Controversy in Jerusalem. A new law is passed that could change the character of Israel. The latest direct from the Holy City. Plus, a mystery treasure ship has been found on the sea floor. What could be aboard is amazing. The news starts right now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. The clerical sex abuse scandal in Chile is taking a dramatic turn tonight. Prosecutors in every region of the country are being assigned to investigate the wrongdoing. The man giving those orders is Chief National Prosecutor Jorge Abbott, seen on the left in this photo, talking with the Pope's chief investigator, Cardinal Charles Scicluna. He was in Chile to get to the bottom of the crisis. After his report hit the Holy Father's desk, the country's bishops offered to resign. Now Chile's two cardinals are in the crosshairs of the investigation. Crux Vatican correspondent Inez San Martin has breaking news about that part of the story, and she joins us now. Inez, thank you as always for being with us. What can you report about Cardinal Ricardo Azadi, the Archbishop of Santiago?
Thank you, Liz. What we can report right now is that Azadi is being investigated by the local prosecutor Emiliano Arias, who in the recent weeks has raided the archives of the Diocese of Santiago, not once, but actually twice, in connection to allegations of the former chancellor of the diocese, who's been accused of sexually abusing at least 7 children, 5 of whom were his nephews.
Inez, there's even more history here. The cardinal has presented his resignation to the Pope twice, but so far it hasn't been accepted. Why not?
Personally, Liz, what I believe is Pope Francis is trying to, first of all, get to the bottom of it all. At this point, we have to remember what we have on Cardinal Azadi are allegations. We don't yet have evidence that he is in fact guilty. However, we do know from Pope Francis himself that crimes have been committed in Chile, by the Chilean Church in regards to cover-up, including the destruction of evidence. When it comes to Azadi specifically, I believe that what Pope Francis is trying to do is secure a good replacement. Right now, we've seen him appoint 5 different apostolic administrators in 5 Chilean dioceses. We haven't yet seen the Pope create new bishops or transfer bishops that are already existent. That, in my belief, is why Pope Francis is taking so long.
Cardinal Francisco Javier Errázuriz, he's one of the 9 cardinals who advised the Pope on Vatican reform, and he's also facing accusations in connection with the crisis. What's the latest regarding him?
The latest on him, Liz, is that he too is being investigated together with Cardinal Azadi. We need to remember that Errázuriz is the predecessor of Azadi. He's currently in his mid-80s. However, he was the head of the Diocese of Santiago for some 10 years, including during the time that Chile's most notorious pedophile priest, Father Fernando Karadima, was found guilty by the Vatican of sexually abusing minors.
Inez, there's so much more to the story. You're also reporting that the prosecutor is interviewing potential witnesses. What's the significance of that development?
I believe, Liz, that tells us that the investigation is a lot more advanced than simply raiding archives from the church. We're seeing a man in Arias, the prosecutor, who's already identified different people he needs to talk to try to get to the bottom of what's going on. And just reading papers that he's collected are not enough. He's definitely pushing forward with the investigation. And I personally am very interested to seeing what he finds and what is disclosed of this investigation.
Inez, you had a conversation with Juan Carlos Cruz. He's the abuse survivor who met with the Pope. What's he telling you?
What he's telling me, Liz, is that despite it all, he actually has hope that things are going to change in the Catholic Church in Chile. And specifically, he also told me that he trusts Pope Francis. As you said, he met with the Pope some months ago. He didn't disclose any of this, but about 2 months ago, when they gave a press conference, it was Juan Carlos Cruz and 2 other victims or survivors of Father Karadima told journalists that the Pope had asked them to continue to communicate with him and to continue to provide him with information. He told me yesterday is that he's hopeful for what's happening and for what's going to be done.
Inez, really quickly, what's next?
It's almost impossible to guess. I do believe several more bishops will see the resignations being accepted. I do believe we're going to see survivors of clerical sexual abuse in Chile continuing to come forth under the leadership, I have to say, of people like Juan Carlos Cruz, who against the odds continues to fight both public opinion in many times, but specifically the rejection from the Catholic Church. We know for a fact that several other dioceses have been raided in recent days, and of course all of it related to allegations of clerical sexual abuse, and we're going to see what comes out from those investigations too.
All right, Inez, thank you so much. Always great talking to you.
Thank you.
Australia's Prime Minister is demanding that the Pope fire an Australian Archbishop. Philip Wilson is the most senior cleric ever convicted in connection with child sex abuse, guilty of not reporting crimes. Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull insists that the clergyman should have quit after his conviction in May. Upheaval in Israel as the Jewish state okays a controversial law. A passionate debate in Parliament raged on until the early hours of this morning. OREN LIEBERMANN is in Jerusalem with the latest.
After an emotional hours-long debate that went into the early hours of Thursday morning, Israel passed into law what's known as the nation-state bill. This highly controversial bill enshrines into law that Israel is the home, the nation-state of the Jewish people. Critics slam the law because, though it makes extensive reference to Judaism as a core principle, it fails to mention equality, a value that is mentioned in Israel's Declaration of Independence. The law also fails to mention democracy or minority rights. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who pushed for the legislation, hailed its passage, calling it a defining moment in the history of the State of Israel. Long live the State of Israel, he said. Most of the law deals with small factors that have little practical impact. For example, one section sets the national anthem, another describes the Israeli flag. These are things that every citizen here already knows, Israeli and Arab. But one of the most immediate effects of the law is to downgrade the status of Arabic. Since the foundation of the State of Israel, Arabic was an official language. Now it's been demoted to a language with special status. Members of Knesset from the opposition slammed the legislation, with politicians from the Joint Arab List Party calling it the last nail in the coffin of the so-called Israeli democracy, which has been dying in recent years from racist diseases. Israel is one of the few Western-style democracies without a constitution. Instead, the country's executive and legal system are guided by what are called basic laws. They require an absolute majority of Knesset members to pass, and they're harder to change. This nation-state law has been passed as a basic law, giving it added significance in Israel. OREN LIEBERMANN, Jerusalem.
Violence continues to wreak havoc in Nicaragua. Nicaraguan forces stormed the indigenous community of Monimbo, a center of opposition to President Daniel Ortega's regime. Father Augusto Gutierrez, who ministers in the community, says the militants attacked with heavy military weapons, destroying churches. Father Gutierrez refers to the attacks as a genocide, noting that people were using homemade weapons to defend themselves. President Trump is taking another shot at NATO, telling Fox News that the mutual defense agreement could lead to a major war. He's asked about coming to the aid of the newest member, Montenegro.
Why should my son go to Montenegro to defend it from attack? Why is that? I
understand what you're saying. I've asked the same question. You know, Montenegro is a tiny country with very strong people.
Yeah, I'm not against Montenegro or Albania.
No, by the way, they're very strong people. They're very aggressive people. They may get aggressive. And congratulations, you're in World War III.
Montenegro is slightly smaller than the state of Connecticut and has a population of about 600,000 people. Russia objected when the country joined the NATO alliance. Russian Maria Butina is behind bars tonight, held without bail in Washington. Prosecutors argued she is a serious flight risk. The 29-year-old is accused of working as a spy in the U.S., infiltrating powerful political circles to set up a back channel to the Kremlin. Butina has entered a not guilty plea, but she's likely to remain behind bars until her trial. The feds are launching a nationwide crackdown against fake charities. The action is targeting con artists who try to cheat vets and active duty members of the military. Natasha Chen reports the very latest from Washington.
A coalition involving law enforcement, state attorneys general, and the Federal Trade Commission announced an unprecedented crackdown on charities preying on people who want to help veterans and service members.
Help the Vets collected more than $20 million by claiming that donations would help veterans.
But the FTC said 95% of that money went to help the vet's expenses, its fundraisers, and its founder. More than 100 law enforcement actions were taken on similar groups that have credible names, like the National Vietnam Veterans Foundation.
When veterans came to them asking for support, instead of supporting them, they funded the needs of their friends and family members.
And Veterans of America made illegal robocalls asking for cars, boats, and real estate. But the FTC says the donations were just resold for the founder's profit.
I'm here to warn scan artists, watch out. We're investigating complaints. We will track you down.
This is something that's going to affect the life of you and your family. And someone wants to play games for their own personal gain.
The FTC made this video to help Americans donate to worthy organizations. The agency says you should always ask for the full name of the group. Check that name with your Secretary of State, the Better Business Bureau, and other charity rating websites. Don't donate using wire transfers or prepaid cards.
Consumers shouldn't be discouraged from giving. The message here today is that there are effective cops on the beat.
In Washington, Natasha Chen, Currents News.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops approved over $6 million in funding for Europe and Africa. The U.S. CCB's Subcommittee on the Church in Africa approved $1.4 million in funding to support diocesan and pastoral projects in Africa. The bishops also approved $4.9 million for housing and aid projects in Central and Eastern Europe. The reunification of families who cross the U.S.-Mexico border illegally is moving ahead, but Secretary of Homeland Security Kristen Nielsen is vowing to be absolutely thorough about which kids go to which adults.
We will not cut corners. Again, this is about the protection of the child. We had a 315% increase in fraudulent families presenting at the border. Every parent knows where every child is. We know where every child is. But we do want to make sure that that adult that presented with the child is safe for the child.
Nielsen also said Congress still needs to act in order to address broader immigration reform. The Department of Homeland Security continues to work to make a court-ordered deadline to reunify all children by July 26. There's a lot more news headed your way. Volunteers helping make a difference with pro-lifers in the Brooklyn Diocese. The shroud that could have wrapped the body of the crucified Christ is being attacked tonight. What the critics are saying, and the defenders too. A massive warship is located at the bottom of the ocean. The mystery over what could be on board is the stuff of dreams. And do you have a story idea, something happening in your parish we should know about? We want to hear from you. Keep this email handy, newstips@desalesmedia.org. Email us. We'll be right back. They're known as Young Neighbors in Action, and they're making a positive difference in the Brooklyn Diocese. Nearly 80 high school students from across the country are volunteering at various Catholic churches and organizations this week. The nationwide group provides teenagers an opportunity to help others.
I hope to take away as a person just like a new understanding of those who are less fortunate and how we as people can help even in like a small way, just in the community.
Sean McCauley and his group from Connecticut are sorting clothes at Bridge to Life in Flushing, Queens, a pro-life organization that provides donated items to unexpected mothers and their children. A new controversy is swirling around one of the most famous relics in the Catholic Church. There's a report out tonight that raises questions about the blood found on the shroud that's believed to have covered the crucified Christ. Cody Williams reports on what's being claimed.
The forensic anthropologist Matteo Borini and expert in organic chemistry Luigi Garlascelli have published a controversial study regarding the bloodstains on the Holy Shroud. The scientists assure they don't match those of someone who has been crucified and may be painted. Still, Shroud experts say this study is faulty, beginning with the methods used. For example, they used anticoagulants for the tests, which affects the results. In addition, they failed to take into account the state of the skin following torture. Emanuelo Marinelli has been studying the shroud for 41 years and assures this experiment is ambiguous in every way. To do a credible experiment from a scientific standpoint, one cannot use liquid blood that flows like water. This is the first error. Later, they've done another questionable procedure with a wound on the wrist in which they obviously didn't crucify someone to demonstrate it, but rather used a bit of blood on a wrist and pressed down on it with a piece of wood for 10 seconds. The expert says it's absurd to perform these tests using a mannequin found in any store and without keeping in mind the weight of a human body and real wounds from nails. It's not something serious. It's absolutely not comparable to the scientific investigations done by those who have truly studied the Shroud. These two men, the authors of this study, have never seen the Shroud up close, and surely not from afar. In addition, those who deny that the Shroud is real tend to trivialize the topic. It wouldn't be the first time this has happened. Marinelli says there was even an anthropologist that bragged about never having seen the Holy Shroud and was the author of a book claiming it was a hoax. Investigations on the Shroud will continue, given that it has still not been determined how the image was formed on it and how it shows the exact wounds of Jesus during the Passion. In Rome, Cody Williams, Currents News.
The date is set when two major figures will become saints. Pope Francis announced during a Vatican meeting with cardinals that on October 14th he will canonize Oscar Romero and Pope Paul VI along with 5 others. Oscar Romero is an archbishop from San Salvador who was assassinated after speaking out against injustice. And Pope Paul VI is known for his encyclical forming the church's ban of birth control. A heroic woman who sacrificed life-saving treatment to protect her unborn child is now on her way to sainthood. Corbella Patrillo rejected treatment for a fatal form of cancer because it risked the life of her unborn son. Instead, she waited until after his birth, but by then it was too late and Patrillo passed away. Now to an impressive discovery. A firm in South Korea found a massive Russian warship more than a century after it sank to the bottom of the ocean. Andrew Stevens has the report from Seoul about the mystery of what could be found under the waves.
You're not going to believe it. I have a name. I have a name. It's in Russian. I can't read it.
And with that, the mystery of the final resting place of the Russian warship Dmitry Donskoy was solved. In the deep, dark waters off the South Korean island of Orlando, 434 metres or more than 1,400 feet down, these Russian Cyrillic letters revealing the final resting place of a ship that treasure hunters have been searching for decades. Video footage from the salvage team show the ship's wheel, marine growth encrusted guns and the anchor. Its stern severely damaged, the result of an attack by Japanese warships during the Russo-Japanese War of 1905. She was so badly damaged from that encounter that the captain had her scuttled, deliberately sunk, after evacuating almost 600 crew and soldiers to the nearby island of Ulendo. And that's where it gets interesting. The Russians didn't want her to fall into Japanese hands because the Dmitry Donskoy, it's been reported, was carrying gold, fabulous amounts of gold. If you believe some reports, the total amount of gold bars and coins on board would today be worth more than $130 billion. That's right, billion. A quick back-of-the-envelope calculation suggests it would have to be carrying thousands and thousands of tons of gold to be worth that much. All to pay for Russia's war against Japan. But there are many treasure ship skeptics. Why, they ask, would the Russians entrust so much loot onto one ship? Why even would they send it by ship when they could have sent it by rail across Russia to the eastern city of Vladivostok? The salvage company that found the Dmitry Donskoy say they plan to raise her, but they didn't say when. And according to South Korean law, they'll have to fork out about 1/10 of what they think the ship is worth. Not surprisingly, they're not commenting on the amount of gold. The Dmitry Donskoy has already given up its location, but the biggest mystery, what lies beneath those rotting decks, remains, at least for now, unsolved.
That was Andrew Stevens reporting from Seoul. The boys' soccer team is asking for one thing after being rescued from the cave in Thailand. The team celebrated their first day back home at a temple, praying for protection from misfortunes. 11 of the boys and their coach knelt down and put their hands together in prayer while monks chanted around them as a symbol of extending their lives and protecting them from dangers. Still to come on Currents News, a powerful show of team spirit as Little Leaguers rally around a boy facing a tough challenge and make him a superstar. If you're a milk drinker, don't go anywhere. News about a government crackdown that you'll want to know about. We'll be right back. Think you've got milk? Tonight, the feds in Washington are saying not so fast. The FDA is cracking down on non-dairy products calling themselves milk. Under new rules, products made from soy, almonds, and other plant-based sources can no longer be labeled milk. The reason? They don't contain lactose. The action is seen as a major boost for dairy groups. A major league move by a Little League team for a young boy battling a very serious illness. Young sluggers from a small town in Kentucky invited their ailing friend to join their winning lineup, and it didn't take long to realize adding him to the roster was a grand slam decision.
We have been doing great.
The talented 11U Jefferstown All-Stars are getting ready for regional tournament play.
Get the feet working.
A big reason, a teammate who gets them fired up.
He's funny, he's supportive, he's kind, and he's awesome.
Soon to be sixth grader Brendan McKinley is talking about his St. Martha classmate, 11-year-old Brandon Bishop, a kid who had a growing brain tumor, a kid no one else on the team even knew.
When I figured out I had to have surgery, I was really sad.
Brendan showed his teammates pictures of Brandon in the hospital.
Telling us how he always wanted to be on a team and be a part of something.
Some of those kids that have the tumors don't make it out.
They thought, why not make Brandon part of their team? After his brain tumor was removed, July 2nd, they did.
We invited him to throw out the first pitch of the game in E-Town in our state tournament.
And that was just the beginning. From asking him to sit in the dugout to a daily text, today we play for Brandon, to coming up with a special cheer.
I got Brandon back! Who's got Brandon back? I got Brandon back! I did not know who these kids were, and they did all this for me.
The kids made Brandon their tourney MVP. Little brother Zach and mom Beth noticed a big change.
Like seeing my brother happy all the time.
It just was, it was great to see him smile again.
Coach Keith Hendrick says the motivation is mutual.
Our kids really got to see the effect of somebody fighting and pushing every day.
They just really changed his life.
And he definitely changed theirs. Brandon's family has to wait a few more weeks to get pathology results from his tumor. Right now, though, they're focused on a regional baseball game happening on Friday. Sometimes when God calls, you don't answer. Juan de Caceres was so disconnected, he avoided church for years and dedicated most of his life to tending bar, until a series of soberingly unfortunate events and a supportive friend led him back to church. Today, Father Juan of the Diocese of Santander in Spain says despite coming up with numerous excuses against discerning a vocation, God was persistent in pursuing his heart. That is Currents News. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Liz Faublas. Remember to set your DVR to record this program so you never miss it, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.